All right, my friends, I am back. I have five big stories for you today. So, we're going to first talk about Putin's shift in the nuclear doctrine and what that looks like and what that means. So, here we'll
В
watch him talk.
обновленной редакции
The revised version of the document proposes to consider the aggression against Russia by any non-nuclear state, but with the participation or support of a nuclear state, as their joint attack on the Russian Federation.
Did you catch that? So, that means that if Ukraine attacks Russia, and that could be a reason for nuclear use, and if they attack Russia with American weapons, then that could be a reason for their nuclear use, which is patently absurd. Okay, we're talking about conventional weapons, not even with nuclear weapons.
оставляем за собой право.
We reserve the right to use nuclear weapons in the event of aggression against Russia, including if the enemy, using conventional weapons, creates a critical threat to our sovereignty.
And how they define critical threat, well, that's kind of up to him. But this is just an absurd doctrine. It's more nuclear saber rattling, but it's not showing strength. It's showing weakness if you look at it. Okay, let's watch this as well.
Warning, yet another nuclear warning from Vladimir Putin to the West, but this one is more specific than previous ones, though. So as President Zelensky was addressing the UN, President Putin here was addressing his Security Council about changing Russia's nuclear doctrine, which is the document that defines when and how Russia could use nuclear weapons. Currently, it states that they can be used if the security of the state is at risk, which is quite a nebulous concept, of course. Now, Vladimir Putin has said he wants to change that and be more specific so that to allow Russia to respond with nukes to an attack by any state using conventional weapons. So, for example,
so first, that's crazy.
Drones, missiles, and aircraft. And that's not all. He also said that Moscow would consider any assault from a non-nuclear power that's supported by a nuclear power to be a joint attack. And you don't have to be a military.
That means, that the United States and most of Europe and whatever would also be susceptible, or they would set themselves up for a Russian nuclear attack by supporting Ukraine. This is just nonsense.
Genius to understand that he was referring there to Ukraine being supported by NATO. It was a very thinly veiled warning indeed. So why is he saying this now? It's all a response to this issue being mulled by the UK and the US still over whether or not to allow Ukraine to use Western weapons to strike deeper inside Russia. They still haven't reached an agreement on that.
And he really, 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 really doesn't want that to happen. And this doesn't scream strength, it screams weakness, because he so badly doesn't want to have this happen that he's changing his nuclear doctrine. He's like a cat that does this kind of thing in order to make itself look bigger. That's what's going on here. Okay. It's almost dramatic. Like, this is Putin down here going, oh, look what the West has done. Nothing has changed in the West, but you're being a little bit too dramatic. Okay. Zelensky's office, this is Andrei Yermak, says, beside nuclear blackmail, Russia has nothing else, no other tools to intimidate the world. That's right. I've given this analogy before, but I haven't said it for a while. Imagine that you're a big, bad kind of tough guy, or you think you are, and you have a grenade in your hand. This isn't a grenade. This is just a little clicker. Don't get worried or call the authorities or anything. You have a grenade in your hand or in your pocket, and you walk into a bar. You get into a fight with somebody in the bar. You have to fight conventionally. You have to fight with your fists, right? You can't pull out a grenade and blow it up, because you're going to blow yourself up and everybody in there. And that's just, you can't use it. That's where Putin is. He has nuclear weapons, but he can't use it, but he can't really fight as well as he thought he could, and that's why we are where we are. Polish President Duda responded to Putin's recent nuclear threats, stating that there is nothing new in his comments. Duda emphasized that Putin knows that whoever uses nuclear weapons first will be cursed and held accountable, and the world won't forget. Spot on. Absolutely right. The EU rejects Putin's nuclear PR stunt as reckless and irresponsible. This was in the Kyiv Post. There's a short thread here by Andres Umland, and I think he's got a lot of really good points, so I'm just going to work through these. This is a psychological PR operation by the Kremlin without much substance. It is designed to scare leaders and voters of countries supporting Ukraine. Okay, I think that's fair. Ukraine has, for more than 2 years, attacked Russian military targets on 5 occupied Ukrainian territories that are, after the annexations of 2014 and 2022, official Russian state territory, according to Russian Constitution: Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. So they're already attacking there. I mean, this has been going on, right? So there's nothing new here. Okay. More recently, Ukraine has attacked numerous military and industrial targets on Russia's legitimate state territory. There was even at least one drone flying into the Kremlin itself. Some of these attacks had impressive results. The existing Russian military doctrine already allows Moscow to use nuclear weapons in response to attacks with conventional weapons only. The phrase "very existence of the Russian state" could have been interpreted to mean the inviolability of its borders or security of airspace or whatever, however they wanted to do that. No wonder that Russian politicians and propagandists have been voicing nuclear threats against numerous countries on a monthly basis since 2022, yet no nuclear weaponry has been employed, neither in Ukraine nor elsewhere. Russian decision to use nuclear weapons would be guided less by doctrinal documents than by power considerations. So, if the Kremlin thinks using weapons of mass destruction will increase its power, it will do so independently of any official Russian text. Therefore, the West and other states interested in avoiding Russia's use of weapons of mass destruction should make sure that the Kremlin does not think that it can get away with it. That's really what this amounts to. And we've done a poor job incentivizing the Russians properly. Okay. So, Darth Putin wrote, "The best bluff I make is not that I will use nukes. It is that there is some way to appease me that will take my nukes off the table, when all it does is reinforce the value of the bluff." Yeah, there's something quite right about that. Okay. Zelensky, big story number 2, held a meeting on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly with Joe Biden, and as a result of that, we're seeing quite a positive outcome in one regard. Now, Biden said, "This war has shown us that Ukrainians can do anything that they set their minds to. So today, we show Ukrainians that they're not in it alone. You are not alone in the fight, and you're not alone in the reconstruction that comes after." And Zelensky was thanking Joe Biden for the $8 billion that has come out of this meeting. Thanks to our closest ally, the United States, for finding a way to allocate the remaining security assistance. We will use this assistance in the most efficient and transparent manner to achieve our major common goal, victory for Ukraine. I'm grateful to the United States for providing the items that are most critical to protecting our people: an additional Patriot air defense battery, other air defense capabilities, interceptors, drones, long-range missiles, air-to-ground munitions, as well as funds to strengthen Ukraine's defense industrial base. Also appreciate the decision to expand the program to train more of our pilots to fly F-16s. Ukraine and the United States remain close allies dedicated to defending freedom, human life, and shared security in Europe and beyond. Listen to this now. We have always valued the strong bipartisan support in the United States and among Americans for Ukraine's just cause of defeating Russian aggression. Well, he's not wrong. There has been bipartisan support. Now, I know the Republicans have been letting Ukraine down, especially in the form of Mike Johnson and Donald Trump. But when we look at what's actually happening, in the Senate, Mitch McConnell has been stalwart. And if you look at the leadership in the House committees, the Republican leadership has been pretty good about it. But Johnson has been a real problem, and so has Trump. Okay, who can spot the difference? You'll see 2 different versions of this statement that closed out things. And this was the previous statement that to meet Ukraine's urgently needed battlefield requirements and defend against Russian aggression. And the latest one said this: "and its associated capability coalitions to provide the support Ukraine needs to win the war." And I've only seen this once before. This is only the second time that I've seen this kind of statement, and that's what they should have been doing all along. Meanwhile, Trump, Vance, and Johnson claim Zelensky favors Democrats. And yeah, they've gone out of their way. According to The Hill, that The Hill is a periodical, the event when Zelensky went to see the factory in Pennsylvania, the event was interpreted by Republicans as a clear signal of political favoritism. Zelensky described his Pennsylvania visit as him making a special trip to the Keystone State to visit the Pennsylvania workers who are playing a vital role in Ukraine's defense. Well, I'm not sure that that's quite fair. Like, okay, so here is St. Javelin's reporting this. Zelensky invited Trump to meet. He refused. He invited Speaker Johnson to meet. He refused. Now he, that's Johnson, is getting pissed that Ukrainian delegation met Democrats and visited American workers at an artillery plant to thank them personally for their contributions. Okay, so this is a letter to Zelensky from Speaker Mike Johnson saying, I demand that you immediately fire Ukraine's ambassador to the United States. As you have said, Ukrainians have tried to avoid being captured by American domestic politics. The facility was in a politically contested battleground state and was led by a top political surrogate for Kamala Harris and failed to include a single Republican because, on purpose, no Republicans were invited. Now, if no Republicans were invited, that's a real bad oversight. It's a stupid thing to do. But I highly doubt that this was an intentional effort to have some sway in the election. And within the Republicans, would you really have wanted to do that? I mean, are you, Mike Johnson, or Trump? The Republican Party is pretty split here. And while Republicans like me were thrilled, I was thrilled. I highlighted this. There is a good fraction of this, particularly on the MAGA side, that is not at all interested in this. These incidents cannot be repeated. Thank you for your prompt attention to this matter, and I trust you will take immediate action. Speaker Mike Johnson. Okay. Meanwhile, Zelensky arrived today in the Capitol, and he's flanked by the Democratic leader in the Senate and the Republican leader in the Senate, and everything's going well in the Senate. But Mike Johnson's playing more of the political game, while Mitch McConnell, the Republican in the Senate, is actually trying to support Ukraine. Okay, turning our attention to other news, more than 30 countries of the European Union adopted a joint declaration for support and recovery of reconstruction of Ukraine during the G7 plus Ukraine meeting in New York. Now, they promised $50 billion by the end of the year for proceeds from frozen Russian assets, and that's another body that was meeting beyond the UN in order to support Ukraine. Now, without strong leadership and an adherence to the rules within the world, lots of bad things start happening, like North Korea and Iran starting to get really antsy. China just conducted its first known in 44 years test of an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of reaching U.S. territory, according to the South China Morning Post. And they're doing more than that. A Russian company is reportedly collaborating with entities in the People's Republic of China to develop an attack drone for Russia's war in Ukraine. So that's going on. Meanwhile, Ukraine is hoping that India might actually be able to help get a peace deal through with Putin. Ukraine is pinning its hopes on Indian Prime Minister Modi to broker a peace deal with Russia that doesn't involve territorial concessions. I don't know that there's anything that, unless Russia feels that they're losing, will come of something like that. They will want territory, and they will want guarantees that NATO will not be on their border. Okay, finally, I'm going to show you this meme, and Darth Putin says, yet another example of Trump being tougher on Putin than either Obama or Biden, as described by this geopolitical analyst, well, the person that made the meme. And they say something that I think is somewhat fair and then somewhat not fair. I let Putin invade Georgia. Well, it's not like he let him. He said strong words after this happened, and he was, hoping things would just stop. I let Putin invade Crimea. Same strong words, and nothing happened. I let Putin invade Ukraine. Well, how about that? The rest of Ukraine in 2022. And then this, I didn't let Putin invade blank. Okay, but that's not really fair. What you did was stand by and watch as you were going after ISIS, Russia, supporting Syria. It wasn't an invasion, but still. And while there wasn't the Ukraine invasion, and that's fair, you can claim, rightly so, that Russia didn't invade Ukraine on your watch. But at the same time, really? I mean, let's think about this. What is likely to happen based on your statements moving forward? It doesn't look like there's the support for Ukraine, and that breaks my heart. So this is a bipartisan effort to appease Putin for the last 20 years, and it's very sad. All right, my friends, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.